Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us on a really momentous day in a period of momentous times. Um, I feel very, very fortunate here to have David Pepper with us, who is one of my favorite people on the planet. If you're not following David, you really should. You'll see why when we get through this. And Joe Trippi, uh, the guy that I hated to go up against the most as a Democratic strategist when I was doing Republican campaigns, in many ways invented modern politics in the Dean campaign, um, wrote a great book about it, who also has a great podcast, that Trippi Show. But look, let's just dive in. David, you're actually a lawyer, um, and Joe and I just play one. Um, what can you speak to where you think these lawsuits are headed, and are they likely to be successful? And how's this process going to work out?
Yeah, I mean, I hate trying to predict lawsuits, especially this day
Yep.
and age. We see from Eileen Cannon that very strong suits can disappear at the hands of the wrong judge. Um, but and there's a lot of problems with DOGE generally. You know, if you read the executive order, it was drawn up actually quite narrowly. It was given a narrow mission of being about modernizing technology and software. That's clearly not what it's doing. But the fact that even the executive order says that's what it's doing, they did that for a reason. It was somehow to create not a real agency, give it a nose under the tent. But the fact that it's already violating the terms of its own executive order is sort of a flag that the reason they were trying to create it small, there were reasons for that, but they're clearly not doing that. So I think there's been a lawsuit by Crew that is
All right.
taking on the broader construction of it. But the lawsuit I took some time to dig into that I thought was really strong, and hopefully kind of like the one about the federal freeze, the first to kind of get acted upon, was the one filed yesterday by the AFL-CIO and retired Americans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, DOGE is a problem, but a secretary of the Treasury agreeing to turn over all that information to anybody without going through the process, and in some cases consent of our information needs to be given. In other cases, they have to really look into, is this for an appropriate use? Who are these people? Do they have the right access? This guy just turned it all over. And the point of this lawsuit is to say that violates privacy law, that violates tax law. And my hope is that gets into the hand of a court that can stop this right away. The concern is that it's already sort of out there. But I also think this lawsuit is very clear about the scope of how bad this is, and how, if you're a federal employee at the Secretary of the Treasury level or below, you have a duty to not just turn over stuff because some guy from DOGE who's 20 years old and worked for Musk asked for it. And my hope is that that gives a lot more backbone to officials who are clearly being bullied by Musk to do things they just shouldn't be doing.
So, where is this lawsuit being filed?
I'm assuming in D.C. I don't even remember where it's been filed. I basically was focused on the merits,
Yeah.
and they're asking for an injunction. And my hope, I mean, clearly there's massive harm out there. My reading of the complaint, it seems like a pretty clear path to get an injunction. Let's hope that happens.
Yeah, I got a bunch more questions for you. But Joe, let me ask you, as a representative of the Democratic Party here, as you always are.
Yeah, I'm not.
I know no one
That's
is more
not
critical.
fair, man.
Just for the record, no one is more critical of the Democratic Party than Joe Trippi. And very smart criticism. But what's your take on how Democrats have responded so far? And we have a clip that we could play afterwards.
Well, it's been slow and, in my view, too muted. But it's definitely picking up steam, I think, in the last few days, which is a good sign. Because the one thing that I think is pretty clear from history is that the first 60 days of this kind of authoritarian grab is the most important time. To
Right.
stay, if you don't stop it, if you don't fight it, if you don't throw sand in the gears, lawsuits, hold like Schatz did, start holding appointments hostage until you get USAID, whatever. I mean, all this kind of stuff. You got to do it, and you got to go all in for the first 60 days and fight. And unfortunately, for the first, 10 days, that didn't really happen. And hopefully, and I am hopeful that they get it, because this is not, again, I still think there's too many Americans, too many Democrats, too many in the pro-democracy movement that don't understand completely how urgent this is. And so it's not a complaint against the party. I mean, again, there's always been this normalcy bias that it'll take care of itself somehow.
That's a great phrase. I'm going to steal that.
Yeah.
And that it's just, no, it's not going to take care of itself.
Yes.
We have to fight, and not just the 60 days, but the first 60 are critical. They're very critical. If you look through history, you look at Hungary, you look at Poland, you look at all where these attempts have been made. They either you throw up the roadblocks fast and hard, and then you keep fighting for years sometimes. But it has to be in the first 60 days.
Yeah, Sam, I think you have a clip of some Democratic congressman.
Congressman Maxwell Frost here with many of my colleagues. We're here because an unelected billionaire has access to the private information of our constituents that we want to answer.
Yeah, so it's Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett here, and let me tell y'all, oversight is going to do our job. So we are here because we need to understand why it is that our Department of Treasury has been broken into, and we need to go ahead and handle the person that decided that they were going to have the audacity to go after our information.
Seth Magaziner from Rhode Island, former state treasurer. We need to know who is in control of the Treasury, what their permissions are, what their intentions are, and what they want to do with your money and your identity. We need answers now.
What do we need?
So, David, that's DC focused, obviously, which is one approach. So here's the thing that I've been asking myself. And I don't know enough to know, but it's something that you would know a lot about. There are very strict laws. Well, there's laws in every state about data leaks and about data control. Some more strict than others. I've run into this in situations where organizations I've been involved in had potential data leaks, and we had to notify Attorney General. We were required to notify Attorney General.
Mm-hmm.
What about that line of attack with obviously, Republican attorney generals aren't, but Democratic attorney generals. And as you know, well, very few attorney generals run for attorney general because that's their last ambition in politics. Is that an angle that you think could prove fruitful?
I actually think that's a good idea. I mean, attorney general, Republican and Democrat attorneys general, talk every day about how their job is to protect consumers. They literally do suits about privacy. So I think an attorney general of Ohio or Delaware or anywhere else, there are citizens of these states who've just had their information turned over. If a private company did it, they would challenge it. I think that's a really good question, a really good avenue. And let me just say on Joe's point, it has been slow and it's picking up, and I'm glad they were there today. I really want to praise the senator from Alaska. But what I loved yesterday, when no one was doing much, was Andy Kim showed up at USAID by himself.
Yeah, I saw that.
Mm-hmm.
And he tried to go in. And here's the point. If we act business as usual, which is just the floor speech for a minute and we make a lot of noise, the American people will think, well, they're saying it's a threat to democracy, but they're acting the same as they act every other day. And they'll read from our actions that we're not really acting like it's different. So I think at moments like this, multiple ways, like you said, state attorneys general, showing up at a building as a senator and not being allowed in. If we are really concerned, as we are, your actions should seem to be concerned. I mean, let's give Trump credit. His side acts concerned in what they say. Now, I think a lot of it's performance, but they really seem to believe it. If we're just giving the same speeches as we always give, or less, we're silent, then our words don't, to the average voter who can't figure out who's lying and who tells the truth, our actions are so inconsistent with what we're saying that they just don't believe it. So I actually think from a messaging standpoint, to convince people, as Joe said, that this is serious, our actions need to feel serious or we aren't taken seriously. And by the way, I looked it up. The case is in D.C. as I assumed. But no, I think the state level action, I think people showing up outside of congressional offices in states to say, why are you letting my information be taken? What's wrong? That happened some in 2017. I saw it. It made it clear to people this is not normal. And to Joe's point, the difference between moments like this lasting a couple years and 30, 40, 50 years is what we do right now. This month, first 100 days, first 2 years can determine if my 8 and 10-year-old think this is all normal or if the way we all behave makes people see this is not normal, we have to change it back. Our activity very soon has years of impact for good or for bad.
Can I ask a question on the legal stuff? Doesn't every American have standing right now on their Social Security number being released to these guys? Couldn't there be a class action suit of some kind? I
would imagine that there are lawyers putting that case together right now. When you go through, one of my favorite parts about the suit I mentioned is, in some cases, the data breaches that upset us, we actually gave our information to the credit card company. This is information that we don't even have a choice because we're taxpayers or we collect Social Security.
Right.
The government takes it because of that. We don't even have a choice, and they gave it all away. It's bad whenever there's a leak of information, but often we chose to interact with that company. They did something stupid. In this case, we didn't give the government this information voluntarily. As citizens, we must do it to pay taxes, everything else. So it's even more wrong that that's the information that they should be protecting it more than anybody else because we aren't even voluntarily giving it. We have to give it. And so I think there's clearly, I guarantee you, lawyers probably racing to get their hands on that big class action lawsuit.
Yeah. Well, if it happens, everybody should join the damn thing.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah.
It's true foul. The millions, the fact that we have to give this information to the government, now it's going out the other. I'm not the first one to say this. We may shut down TikTok because we think they're using our information, and here our own government just gave it out to a billionaire.
That's what's kind of fascinating to me about this is how I hesitate to use the I word of impeachment, but what could it be that Elon Musk is actually pushing the thing so far that he's the guy that takes down Trump? I know we all talk about him being the president, but in other words, it hit me today that he's so gone over the edge on what he's doing that enough people I'm not talking about the Senate yet, but I'm talking about the American people standing up against what Musk is doing about this overreach, about stealing their data, their Social Security number, all this stuff. And whether the backlash, if we can raise the alarm in these first 60 days, is enough that he's the one that actually convinces people that what Trump said he was going to do, he's doing, and that it needs to be stopped.
So, David, let me ask you a question. We were talking about this over at the Lincoln Project. Should not, at the very least, individuals go file complaints at their state consumer protection agency? Because if you thought that your data had been taken, that would be a first step. And every state makes that pretty easy, actually. You don't have to get representation. You don't have to, you just have to state a case. It seems to me that would be one of the most readily available tools, sort of a digital rally. You don't have to get on a bus and go to Washington. And then
the Democratic AGs can act on that because that would generally be through your attorney general of your state, and let the Republican AGs explain why, despite hundreds or thousands of complaints, they're not acting upon it. So no, I think, again, I think we can't respond to this in normalized ways. I think that's exactly the kind of thing. And yeah, if you had another situation of a breach like this, that is what would happen, just because it happened to be the Treasury doing it. And Joe, to your point, in a normal political world, I mean, the Secretary of the Treasury here would be in massive trouble. There would be hearings, and they may resign over something this egregious. I mean, he just gave it all over. So one thing I thought of the other day, guys, just I thought, thinking about DOGE more broadly, and knowing Musk's, conversations with Putin, I kind of feel like it's when little green men started to show up in Crimea.
Yeah.
And they didn't have a name tag on. No one who knew who they were. They kind of showed up, and they weren't really legitimate. And it was sort of taking over Crimea for Russia. That's kind of what DOGE is. It's a bunch of random people. Their authority isn't clear. If you read the suit, it's not even clear who they are. What are they working for DOGE? Do they work for Musk? And they're showing up in these different buildings and starting to bark orders. I mean, apparently shutting down USAID this afternoon more than even the other day. So it really is this almost private version of what Putin did then. A bunch of anonymous people, questionable authority. And that's why on the second question, that also, again, I don't have as much confidence in our courts as I did when I graduated from law school. But the whole DOGE thing is so bizarre, so inappropriate, seemingly illegal, that I'd have to think one of these, I think there have been several cases filed. One of them you would hope would bear some fruit, because it truly is so lawless how they're doing it.
And you know what it's like to go through some kind of clearance process like the White House to get
right.
It's a lengthy process. Interviews with FBI, you have to fill out questionnaires, have to answer a lot of tough questions. None of that has been done here.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that one of the pressure points here, and we're going to go at this in the Lincoln Project, is to ask these young kids, these young tech bros, is this really what you want to stake your career on? Because at the end of the day, when the courts and the whole merry-go-round stops, do you think that you're more likely to be held accountable or Elon Musk?
Right.
And you really think you're going to have a great career ahead of you? You'll be able to get investors if you've been convicted of either civil or criminal action in the largest data theft in history.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be like Adrian Haldeman applying for a job.
And
I think we have to use those sort of unconventional ways.
Yeah.
I personally would love to see everyone who's unhappy with this go to your local Tesla showroom, express your opinion, because Tesla is at the heart of all this, because Tesla is the source of his vast wealth.
Yeah.
And 85% of the profits that Tesla has is from the government. It's carbon credits and EV credits. I mean, that's really the business he's in.
Yeah.
He's not in the car business. He's in the carbon credit business, and they make cars so they can be in that business.
Right.
So I mean,
we had a Tesla on order, and we canceled it a couple of years ago for that reason. We were on a waiting list, and we said forget it. But one other thing, Joe, on your point about is Elon doing it in a way that risks Trump? You all saw this poll. The whole billionaire running the government thing is deeply unpopular.
Right.
There was a poll about Musk's popularity. It's underwater. It asked, do you want billionaires setting policy? It was like 11% positive, 62% negative. So that optic of the billionaires sitting in the front row of the inauguration, this narrative that it's Musk doing this, I think is very damaging politically longer term. I think it's an optics that I think Democrats and frankly anyone can take advantage of.
I also think as a audience of one message that to get Trump a little bit worried that Elon Musk is the guy that could end up getting him thrown in jail or impeached. I mean, I know that's the numbers in the Senate, et cetera, that would, but getting that inside that guy's head is not a bad thing either, because The whole thing here is in the first 60 days, we got to crack as many wedges, create as much division. And you've seen some of them with HB1 visas, et cetera. But I mean, where that coalition, we need to fight every way we can.
We have to take a minute to talk about USAID because that I am constantly just astounded by the fact that the group of the political center in America that was most anti-Soviet Union, strong on Russia, was the conservative element of the Republican Party, has now become the pro-Putin beating heart of American politics. Mm-hmm. So part of this was we're not going out and doing USAID for any so-called woke reasons or just handing it out. This is about power. This is straight up a competition with the Chinese primarily, and who are, if you spend any time in Africa, you will see the Chinese presence omnipresent. And they're not troubled by any ethical rules. If you're an American organization, an American company, American government organization, you can't go into any country and start bribing people, start paying off officials. Chinese just do that all the time. And it's the center of power. This is what we used to call soft power. Is if the wealthiest country in the world can't exert that power, the odds that you're going to have to exert hard power to protect your interests increase exponentially. Yeah, I just find this. I just look at these Republicans I work for, John Cornyn and Roger Wicker. They're going along with this.
No, it's
and in Cornyn, there's no way. That he's ever going to win the MAGA crowd over. In other words, it's sort of like the self-defeating thing where he can't save himself either way. So why not do the right thing here? But
it's so sad. Just as a person, he was on the Texas Supreme Court, highly respected juror. Mm-hmm. He was recruited to run for Attorney General of Texas, and I was around when that was happening. And he was very resistant because he thought the politics was kind of dumb.
Interesting.
And he liked what he did. It was intellectually challenging. And then he became Attorney General, and he was actually a very good Attorney General. And now it's just he's never going to be accepted by MAGA, and neither will Roger Wicker, so many of these people. I don't know. I just go back.
He's going to be primaried. He's going to be primaried, and he's going to be defeated by the MAGA crowd instead of standing up and doing in these first 60 days and being, he's still trying to acquiesce to it somehow.
You know what? One other interesting thing on the USAID is I know enough people in Congress that I actually think the rare moments of bipartisanship that remain are when these guys actually go on foreign trips.
Yeah.
And who do they meet with there? USAID.
Yeah.
Ambassadors. So they actually know what this is. And I know when they come back, friends of mine who are Democrats, I went on a trip and so was actually great. I really enjoyed it. And it's kind of like the one moment left where I think they feel more American and they feel bipartisan. And so this is one where they actually, and again, I did foreign work before I went to law school. When they land, these are the very people who are
it's a really good point.
briefing them. So that's the other thing. They know exactly what these people do, and they see the value, and they participate as members of Congress. So it really is just.
So how do you guys think this will play out with USAID?
Well, the other big thing, though, and this is going back to Joe's point. As much as we all can talk about the importance of USAID, this is about a test case of rule of law.
Yeah.
Because if you can let's say we didn't think USAID was good or that they're wasteful. My guess is there's money to be saved there like everywhere else. But you do it through a congressional hearing, you do an audit, you cut the budget, you pass it. That's not what this is. So what this really is, and I think Musk is and by the way, Musk's talking points about USAID are exactly what Dmitry Medvedev and Vladimir Putin say.
Exactly.
They hate USAID. So it's not an accident that Musk picked them. in the grand scheme of agencies, it's not as popular as, let's say, the VA or something else. But this is a test case. And if they can destroy an agency without any act of Congress, apparently bring the workers home, which apparently they're saying to do this week, if that is done without a massive pushback, political and legal, and if Republicans go along with it, they're basically saying you can do anything you want. And that's why, even if you're not someone in politics who cares that much about it, this is so much bigger than that. This is a true test case of will people fight for the rule of law, and will Congress fight for its own relevance?
So look, guys, just pause for a moment and think about this. We're talking about this. We've been talking almost half an hour, and we haven't even mentioned Tulsi Gabbard. We haven't even mentioned RFK Jr., which in another world, the idea that a longtime heroin junkie who abuses steroids, who's a nut, his own family is afraid of and warning Americans of, is now going to be in charge of America's health. I mean, that would just be extraordinary. But it looks like all of these appointments are going to go through.
Yeah. But I
Well,
agree.
if Cornyn,
It does. Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, when and Cassidy today went, pushed through RFK Jr. So that the Cornyn, there's just the votes just aren't there. They're all going along with it, and I agree with David. They all know. They know what USAID is. They know the harm that RFK Jr. is going to do. They know that Tulsi Gabbard, they have the concerns about national intelligence and security with her in the position, but they're going to be their own fear of losing their power, of being relegated or purged, the threats that they're probably getting, that we know a lot of them are getting, death threats, et cetera, or if not the true death threat, the political death threat that Elon Musk will put $30 million into a campaign and a MAGA candidate against you if you don't do this. That's what's going on. And that's why we really don't have a lot of time here, because the more they cower, the more of these people who cower and enable it, the more it gets entrenched and the more damage. I mean, look at just the damage on USAID, the damage of the tariffs, on again, off again, on again, off again. But that there's real damage being done. Not just, I mean, when you see Canadians booing the American people, our national anthem, these are Canadians. Like this.
I don't think a lot of people in America, a lot of Americans are angry at Canadians unless they don't like Celine Dion or Gordon Lightfoot or something.
Well, I don't think there were a whole lot of Canadians that were mad at Americans until a couple of days ago.
Hold on. So, I think we just have to pause for a minute and talk about who is the most likely to be hurt by all of this. So kids who are going to Exeter, they're going to get vaccinated. There's not going to be a measles outbreak at Choate, at any of these, fancy schools. It's going to be at poor schools, black and white. Those are the people who have little connection with doctors, that mandatory vaccines and the ability to have it free are one of the great protectors they have. So it just strikes me as so ironic. There's this great rebellion against elites, supposedly, the people who are going to, this division is just going to accelerate, because you're going to have people who are the more educated, the more affluent, are going to be not only those who are equipped to get better jobs, they're going to be healthier. Well, they already are healthier. Life expectancy can be gauged by per capita income to a large degree in America. And all of those trends. And where's it going to be worse? It's in the reddest states.
Yeah.
I mean, Mississippi, my home state, is the most unhealthy state by any multiple already. And it has rates of diabetes and heart disease that are just off the charts. And this is only going to get worse. Just like if these tariffs go through.
Right.
Where's it going to immediately be felt the most? It's like at Walmart. You walk in there and try to find something that's made in America. Good luck.
Yeah.
What I wonder, do we think that there will be any sort of trickle down, call it, political impact of that that at some point, there's been a long discussion going back decades of why people vote against their own self-interest. But do you think that this could get to a point where they realize, okay, this federal spending, where these grants go, all of that, they go to law enforcement, they go to fire departments, they go to schools, they go to hospitals? Or is it just sort of going to get muddied in the whole noise of everything?
One answer I'll give, and this goes back to, I think, some of what Joe said, is so Trump has been the sort of billionaire who acted like he wasn't a billionaire. This is why the optics that they actually are being led by real billionaires who act like real billionaires is a problem.
That's an interesting point.
So one of the risks for them may be that the impact on them becomes more clear because Elon Musk is the one who's destroying government. Yeah. Elon Musk and DOGE are the ones who are going to gut Title I in order to give the vouchers to well-off families in suburbs to keep going to private schools they've always gone to. And Trump almost made it seem like it wasn't a billionaire versus everyone else because he created an image that was different. But to the extent the front row, the inauguration, and Elon Musk are clearly that maybe gives us a chance, if we're smart, to frame it the right way and to not have Trump sort of interfere with that message. And I do think on some issues, I think it will break through. I don't know if we've talked since I did this, but a universal voucher referendum in Kentucky went down in flames the same day Trump won. And you guys would have enjoyed joining me. The smallest county in Kentucky, Robertson County, voted by far the most against universal vouchers.
Well, there you go.
Yet they voted 80-20 they voted like 80-20 for Trump, but 76-24 against universal vouchers. And so I went there to talk to folks at the dollar store, the gas station, and I say, hey, why'd you guys vote against that voucher thing? They're like, well, why should our money pay for private schools? We love our local school. And it was so real. Like, they knew the teachers and the principal, and they all went there. And that's the football team. If Trump uses, the teachers all work the ball games. The principal stands outside every day. If he guts Title I, not Department of Education, but Title I, and that money does go to vouchers in suburban Louisville, and Robertson County starts losing funds, and they see that, that's the kind of issue where it's going right to their community. You're not going to flip Robertson County 80-20 to our side. But I think these kind of deep issues, if they see that is his policy directly attacking them, I think that's when you start to see some change. We've got to be running these places to make the argument. If we're not there, they'll blame it on the board or CRT. We've got to be here to say, oh, no, you had to raise your taxes again because Trump took all the money and gave it to that private school 200 miles away. So we have to be there to make the case. But I do think a number of these policies, vaccines, universal vouchers, and others are not only unpopular, but allow us to get into at the community level and to start sort of pulling them apart from some of the people they've been voting for.
Yeah. Well, Sam, I know we got a lot of great questions. You want to run some up and let's talk about them? David, you want to take that? What?
Well, I mean, again, it's easy to say this when you're in office, but right now there are some people getting aggressive. Schatz from Alaska saying, I'm not letting anything go forward. And I have a number of friends in Congress, and some of them already voted for certain nominees. This is not about is each individual nominee a nice person or qualified. It's about the more global, the more broad set attack on democracy. So I don't care if you like Marco Rubio. He just said he was going to be the interim director of USAID, which is lawless. Just like the new Treasury Secretary gave away our data. As long as that is happening, no Democrat votes for any of these people because it's bigger than the individual appointments. And if Brian Schatz and others can stop it from happening, stop it from happening. That's what they would do to us when we haven't even done anything wrong. We have every right to say, and by the way, I don't think we should be threatening shutting down the government. They would want us to do that. But I think when it comes to putting sand in the gears of what they want to do, None of it moves forward until we get answers, and frankly, not just get answers, but end this DOGE nightmare and some of the other things that are happening. That has to be the attitude, and it's not about posturing. It's about actually doing it.
Well, again, the whole thing about the first 60 days, it's also true about the whole 4 years. Everything we can do to delay and slow down what they're trying to do. I mean, in other words, we may not have the votes to stop something, but we have to delay everything. And like you said, sand in the gears. If elected officials out there have got to use every inch of their power to delay, slow down, stop, throw hurdles up to in the way. While hopefully the courts or the lawsuits and other things give us the time and the American people the time to work those offices, call these House members, to really put 360-degree pressure on while slowing everything down. Otherwise, that's why they're moving so fast. That's why they had this playbook. They know that the more they grab right now, the harder it's going to be. And so anything, the Schatz thing of just stopping, nothing's going to happen. I'm going to slow everything down. Yeah, Sam, which is what they did to. They've done that to us for years. We need to come back and make sure we play that playbook hard now, harder than it's ever been played.
So what can ordinary Americans do? We can kind of bat that around. I think, we've talked about some of these things. I think you ought to ask, how does this frame is so important? It's not an administrative change. It's one of the things the Lincoln Project did. We were one of the first to say this is a great cyber heist, the largest in the history of cyber crimes. So what does that do? That gives you standing to use the avenues that are there for you to complain to your state government about the fact that your data has been stolen. So go to your Consumer Protection Agency, go to your attorney generals, and file those complaints. Take it very personally. I think you asked that question, what can ordinary Americans do? Start with thinking that something's being done to you, and it's not theoretical. And how do you respond? Anyway, we talked about a lot of that. Sam, next question. David?
Hold on.
Well,
go ahead, Joe.
No, I would just say defies the courts.
I don't know if you can see it. What happens if Trump defies the courts?
Yeah, the courts have this is the whole problem with the courts is that he defies them. It's not like they have the police that are going to go in and grab the president. So it creates obviously it's going to create a constitutional crisis, but in the end, it's the American people. I mean, so what can the American people do? You got to make your voice heard here. Now's the time to be loud, and particularly if he defies the courts. If this USAID thing, we have to put as much pressure on, particularly on House members in these marginal battleground districts. We got to put amazing and tremendous pressure on them and let them know that they're gone. And make it, because in the end, so first slow everything down, fight like hell the first 60 days. And then the next thing has got to be, we have to win the House back in 26, because if we do that, if you slow them down, stop them in year one, and in year two, you take the House back. They doesn't have all three. It's something that can stop them cold from that point on, and that's got to be, and that's where people come in.
Sam, you're going to run another question for us?
I agree with all that, Joe.
Yeah. David, I mean,
so this comes up all the time, and it's a fair question, but in a way, the best thing in the world for the Trump side is to have the answer be, I don't think we're going to have a real one, and then we don't do what we have to do. We have to, as Joe said, because to me, that's the next step. They are right now afraid of losing a primary. Most of these people are not afraid of losing general elections. We want to make so much damn noise that they are thinking, we've never seen such noise. We've never seen in front of our office. We've never heard so many calls. These are fearful people. They're cowards in many cases. The question is, what are they most afraid of? Right now, it's not us. It's Trump and his people. And so, my hope is the answer is we will have real elections in 26, but I'm going to act as if we are, because if we act as if there aren't, then they win.
Then they've already won. I mean, that to turn the tables on that, when Trump was saying it doesn't matter how you vote, when you had the special elections in Georgia in 2021, in January 5th, 2021, that had a lot to do with the extraordinary reality that two Democratic senators, a black guy and a Jewish guy, got elected from Georgia. Because they discouraged their own vote for lack of faith in the system.
Well, I'd also point out that so far there's only been two specials, and I know one really doesn't matter in Minnesota, but we've won a special. Now everybody goes, "Oh yeah, well you won them in the other years too." Yeah, that's true. Why? Because Trump wasn't on the ballot.
Yeah,
he wasn't on the ballot. When he's on the ballot, 2016, 2020, 2024, that's one thing. When he's not on the ballot, 2018, 2022, 2026, and in these specials, we win.
Yes.
His folks, enough of them don't come out. So we still have. I understand they're going to play games, but in these marginal battleground House seats where they don't have the benefit of Trump being on the ballot and ginning it up, we have a real shot, and we have to fight with everything we can, and that's where you can make a difference, the people that are listening and out there.
So to flip the question, what I would say is, don't worry that we're not going to have them. Obviously, we have to protect them. Get on the ballot.
Yeah.
Run everywhere. 26 can be like 06, but even better. We won everything in 06 because of a backlash to an
I remember. It was
president. Take the opposite attitude of thinking we're not going to have elections and think to ourselves, I don't care if you're in a red district in Louisiana, run in every district.
Absolutely.
Make as much noise as you can. You may not win, but you may lift turnout for other people. But if there's ever a year where we cannot afford to have uncontested races, it may be the year where they're defending billionaires stealing our privacy and destroying public schools in rural Kentucky. And that's when we want to be on the ballot everywhere making the case.
And get rid of your own purity tests. No purity tests.
Yeah.
No purity tests. Whoever gets that nomination, point. Whoever the pro-democracy candidate is, and that get behind them and get them every ounce of your energy. Even if on one issue that's core to you can't, you just don't want to deal with it. No, deal with it, because that's what's on the. It's time for us to put all that stuff aside and realize what this fight is. They are on a mission, a movement to end democracy. We have to be one thing and one thing only: unified as a movement, as a pro-democracy movement that will stand against the propaganda, the lies, the cheat, the corruption, and will put everything else aside to protect the America that we've all, lived and loved. And they think, a lot of them think that's what they're about, but that because of the propaganda that they've been shoveled, we've got to let go of our purity test and become very pragmatic about unity. That's actually, when you look at Hungary and Poland and some of these countries and where they went, the key to stopping a lot of this was how fast and unified the opposition became. And in Poland, that was enough to kind of keep democracy in play. And in Hungary, where the opposition was divided by wings and couldn't come to terms and was slow to react, and didn't make the best out of the first 60 days. Guess what? 5 elections later, Orban is still in power.
Sam, you got next question? Joe?
Yeah. So crypto capture. This is one of the things that I just, yeah, and we see it with Doge now. I mean, before the election, Elon Musk telling everybody, buy Doge, essentially, out there saying buy Doge. And then Donald Trump says, hey, everybody, I just named Elon Musk head of the Department of Government Efficiency, which just happens to be Doge, and sent signals throughout the crypto enthusiast world that you're going to get rich if you do Donald Trump. And then Trump launches his own meme coin. And what this is actually, I think, the biggest thing that's happened, the most incredible thing that's happened is his launch of that coin, because now there's no reporting, there's no nothing. It controls, I think, 200 million coins or something like that. Anybody, the Russians, a billionaire, a corporation can buy a lot of those coins that Trump controls and his family controls, and we'll never know. I mean, it's absolutely legalized bribery or whatever you want. It's not legal, shouldn't be, but there's no reporting. We'll never, ever know. China, Russia, it's all up for sale now. And they've set up the perfect scheme to make it happen. And now, of course, we'll hear about, a Bitcoin Federal Reserve and other things, but it's all to enrich Trump and to make it a crypto capture. Our government is now at risk to anybody out there buying Trump coin and basically shifting that money, those billions, to the president of the United States in return for whatever they want. And we will never know that it happened. Yep. There's no reporting. There's no anything. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I remember being with senators and congressmen when they were raising money, and they refused to make calls from inside, like the Longworth building. They would go outside and stand there.
Yeah,
or they'd go over to the senatorial committee or the Congressional committee. And it was sort of like, well, this is sort of silly, isn't it? No, we got to do this because, we can't.
Well,
and now you have open bribery.
Yeah, I had
by foreign nationals.
Well, how many Trump coin? How many Trump coin is a senator somehow being ending up in his wallet, in his crypto wallet, in exchange for a vote for a nominee? I mean, it's literally, that's the kind of the level.
Right.
And whether that's happening or not, my point is that's totally within the realm. There's no reporting. There's no nothing. And so what happened with Cassidy? And I'm not casting aspersions. I'm saying, but that once that is there, and if anybody who thinks Trump isn't on the take on that, they're out of their minds.
So I checked with someone who's in this world, because when I started hearing coin meme, I'm like, what in the hell are people talking about?
What the hell?
The person who I trusted on this said to me, it's honestly the craziest thing ever if true, like the ultimate heist in history. And this was him texting me the night before, and he was watching it all. And the two things he said, as Joe just said, that you really got to look out for is who's buying all these coins that we don't know about, but also who was in on the inside before it started,
right?
Who is now filthy rich because of it, and what do they owe that they were like dealt in before the thing exploded into billions? So yeah, it's truly over the top and completely lost generally in the media and now forgotten.
But it may have well set up everything that's being played out now. That's what I'm trying to say. It's because as David said, it's the billions, the millions that any number of people who were let in on the front door are now like filthy rich. Yeah. And so I was going to do the right thing here, but you know what? I'm fine.
I mean, all the old stuff, the wealth fund that Kushner set up. All that is peanuts compared to the level of money we're talking about here.
Yeah.
They spent years pretending that it's about investment. This isn't even a pretend. It's just,
Yeah. No, we did a whole podcast on this on that Trippi show where we really went into it, and
it's
people
great.
might want to go back and check that show, that pod. But it's absolutely, and Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway also did a show on this that I'd recommend to people because they were really hot on it
on the
crypto
pivot.
capture. Yeah,
they're not that we should be advertising
pivot,
Scott and Kara, but it is called a pivot. It's one of the few podcasts that I listen to regularly. Unlike a lot of people, I subscribe to like.
I think all the West Coast tech people, they know.
Yeah,
that was who I was getting it from. They know how insane it was, and I think the rest of the political world doesn't.
No, that's what I'm saying is all the stuff that we've talked about that's so crazy, that's so insane. USAID, all this stuff. But this one, it could be, I just think it is the thing that like literally put a big for sale sign on our futures in terms of, anybody, China, Russia, anybody who wants to buy in can do it.
Yeah.
All right, we got time for a couple more questions. Sam, you want to roll one up?
Yeah.
Win the House back.
Yeah, I was going to say,
get to 2026.
The thing about a congressional committee to investigate is you have to have a congressional committee that wants to investigate.
Yeah.
You have the right to. I mean, they investigated Hunter's laptop. They can investigate anything they want to. But
hey, Stu, can I ask a question? Why is it that a Cornyn, and I'm using him as an example, wouldn't just become an independent and have Democrat? In other words, it just seems to me like if you're done, if MAGA's going to, primary and take you out, there's got to be, we as a Democrat, I'd happily, have him be an independent and support. Is
the need? I think it's a very human need to belong.
Yeah,
and to get approval. There's something about most politicians that they need approval, or they wouldn't be running for office.
Yeah,
and it's one of the sort of sad conclusions I've come to since 15 is we shouldn't be surprised by cowardice. We should be surprised by courage, and we should assume cowardice is the norm.
And that's my attitude. Knowing that, we need to make them scared of something else.
Yeah.
Which is the other side coming for bear in 26, Rudware raising hell, because they'll react from fear. And by the way, let's assume Trump's a one-term president. That fear might also creep up in 28. If Vance is running, all of a sudden, after 26, wow, a lot of this stuff isn't going over very well. That fear of losing because of that could also moderate. So count on cowardice, but we need to give them something different to be afraid of than the MAGA far right.
Sam, we got time for one more here. You want to roll it up? Well, Joe was speaking to that. I don't think you're going to know this until it happens. And I suspect it's going to happen over something that is going to be very trivial and petty. Trump is going to feel that he was disrespected. Trump will feel that, Elon treats one of his kids like idiot children, which they are. Something like that. He'll hear that Elon is bragging that he can get the President of the United States to do anything he wants to. So I think Trump is a creature of emotions, and there's no grand scheme or strategy here. Elon will be there to the point that he feels that Elon is not useful and is hurting him. Mm-hmm. I mean, do you guys agree with that?
Joe?
Yeah. I don't know. I think I agree with that. I also think there's a chance that Elon does something so off that Trump realizes that's the thing that's going to get me in big trouble, and therefore you're done. I think
that's a really good point. Well, look, let's wrap this up. David, talk to us about where we can read you and find you. You are the most prolific I hate the word content. You're the most perfect writers, talkers, video
Painter,
makers,
artist,
whiteboard, master of the whiteboard.
artist.
You know what's so it helped. I have 2 younger kids, so I'm always putting them to bed and getting up early, and it actually leads to that. I do a lot of my writing in those moments when they're sort of half asleep. So I feel like there's some advantages that those
So
quiet moments
years
allow.
from now, when your kids are in therapy, they'll say, "Well, but my dad had a very
My dad
successful
was writing
Substack."
about
Yeah,
life.
he
was-
had a very successful Substack.
But I am on Substack. You know, I'm excited that I've gained more followers on Blue Sky than I've lost on Twitter by a good amount. So you can follow me in both places, and that's kind of where I do most of my substantive stuff on those places.
And I got to ask you, as someone who's written novels, and you've now written a novel that was fascinatingly went through reading different chapters and podcasts by different famous, incredibly talented actors and actresses. Do you see more fiction in your future, do you think?
It's once you commit to writing the whole book, it's a lot of commitment. It's a big commitment. I have all sorts of plots in my mind, but then they literally come true before I have a chance to write them.
Yeah.
Like the hard part about political fiction writing these days is it's hard to keep up with reality. It's hard. Plots these days, like the crypto one, Joe, it's so
Yeah.
crazy you wouldn't write it.
You're right.
No one could ever do that the day before at the crypto ball. I mean,
Right.
so I think political fiction writing, if you're trying to be realistic, especially, it's just hard to keep up with what's really happening. But I'm always toying with different plots and characters. But that actually is the biggest challenge, is that the world is so nuts right now. Trying to get someone excited about a crazy up and down political thriller is actually probably hard. It's hard competition with the real world.
With reality, yeah. And that Trippi show, like we've talked about, everybody should be listening to that. The crypto episode was last week, Joe?
A week or so ago, yeah. It's
Okay,
one of the more recent ones, yeah.
And look, everybody out there, let me ask you for all of us to subscribe and join Resolute Square. Nobody else is going to save us. There's nobody there but ourselves. It's a small thing that can lead, if enough of us do it, to big things. And follow all of the stuff. The Enemies List, Rick Wilson's show on Resolute Square, that Trippi show, Maya May's streaming show, Punching Up, which if you haven't watched, Maya May is a force of nature. She's brilliant, she's funny, and she's 6 feet tall, which you may not realize when you watch the show. But she is absolutely forceful. Decoding Fox News, and of course the Lincoln Project podcast, which Rick is out there just hitting out of the park every week. So thank you for joining us. Keep the faith. You've got a lot of things that each of you can do. Now we just have to go out and do it. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Great to be with you.
Thanks for coming, David.
Take care.